Welcome to everybody listening, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen and show support for World Suicide Prevention Day. My name is Louise, or Lou as most call me, and I will be hosting the podcast today, and I am based at one of the areas on our HS2 project looking after occupational health and well-being. As most of us know, it is a hugely important topic that we are discussing today. This aims to be a positive and proactive conversation, but is about a very serious topic. Please be aware that we'll be speaking about suicide and the ripple effect of it, so do look out for each other and reach out for any support you do need during or after listening. This podcast is a collaboration between SCS and Skanska to mark Support World Suicide Prevention Day to change the narrative on suicide. I'm delighted to introduce Joe Mortensen and Stuart Fawcett, who will be talking with me today. Joe Mortensen is the EVP for Skanska and sponsor of the Skanska Mental Health and Wellbeing Network. Stuart Fawcett joined us from Andy's Man's Club, a men's suicide prevention charity. The aim of today's conversation is, as always, to raise plenty of awareness, show support for each other, and of course reduce stigma by having an open, honest conversation about suicide, the ripple effects, and discuss some common myths about suicide prevention. Okay, moving on. So topic 1 is about our experiences and understanding. So let's start off with just a couple of statistics. More than 700,000 people unfortunately die every year due to suicide. 1 in 5 people will experience suicidal thoughts. We all have our own understandings of these experiences with suicide. Joe, we'll start with you. Would you mind sharing yours?
Thank you, and yes, I can do that. And I thought I'd share kind of 3 different experiences, highlighting different aspects of the topic of suicide. I thought it starting with me as a father. I'm a father of 3, and all my children are now what we call young adults. 2 of them are boys, and knowing that there is an increase in the suicide frequency, especially with young men, and that's obviously a concern for me. It's a role of a father to be concerned, and I tend to kind of spend a lot of time thinking about, not necessarily worrying about, but being aware of their mental health and making sure that I look for signs that they are, deteriorating in terms of mental health or having dark thoughts. So it's a concern for me regarding the environment they operate in, all the input they get on social media and so on. So that's kind of the worrying part of me. I unfortunately also have a recent experience with a friend of mine that went through a crisis, which ended up with him having suicidal thoughts. He was doing a piece of work for my parents-in-law at the same time, and I was able to see how he his mental health deteriorated, and it got darker and darker until the point where someone had to intervene, and he was submitted to hospital to get help. Fortunately, that helped, and he's now getting better and improving. But it shows, it showed me how fast you can go from a place where you are having normal thoughts to a stage where you're actually thinking about suicide. And the last experience is unfortunately one I experienced in my job in Skanska, where I had a colleague. I worked for Skanska Norway until a couple of months ago, and last year, unfortunately, we had a colleague that died of suicide. It was not something that we saw coming, so it was a shock to all her colleagues and all she works together with. And I got to see how that impacted the workplace, her colleagues, and all those thoughts, afterthoughts queries about, could have done something else that suicide sparked. So of course, being a crisis for a family and our closest ones, but also the wider effect that had not only on the family but her friends, colleagues, and everyone she worked with. So unfortunately, this is. I would like to have said that this is something I have no experience with, but fortunately it's very present and part of something we all, I think, experience and have to deal with on a frequent basis.
Yeah, I think I totally agree, Joe. And to sort of reflect back on that with what you've said is I never talked about my mental health. I never talked about anything. I grew up with that stigma from my dad and my family and friends. No fault of theirs, but sort yourself out, son. Pull your socks up, get out of the house. It wasn't until 3 years ago that all really much changed, and I did struggle with my mental health various times over the years, but more predominantly in my 30s, where I really struggled with that side of not knowing where the future was, not knowing what to do. And yeah, I think that, with the guys that I see walk through the door for of Andy's Man Club on a weekly basis now, I see that repetitive sort of image coming through where the guys are able to open up, talk for the first time about those issues. One of the biggest things that I found out, and it wasn't until I really took on the role of being area lead for Andy's Man Club in the southeast here, was the fact that the figures around male suicide in the UK are big. With 12 men every day taking their life, that's one man every 2 hours. And I think one figure that I did find out, I'm coming from a construction background myself, was that the construction industry actually is 4 times more likely. So if we can change that narrative today, if we can just start that on conversation, I think this is where it's going to be really important for all of us, and hopefully be able to start some conversations and be more confident and comfortable about talking about those things.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Joe. That will take us nicely into one of the subjects that when we put out a vote, a lot of people were very interested in hearing about. And it's one of the campaigns, part of the campaign this year for suicide prevention. It's called the ripple effect. So unfortunately, suicide is still prevalent in the construction industry, as we know, and wider society. What do you guys think the ripple effect of suicide is in your experience? And why do you think the theme of changing the narrative on suicide is so important for the campaign this year? And I'll start off with you, Andy. Stuart.
Thanks, Lou. So I think where the ripple effect comes in is I actually talk about this in our presentation, where every suicide can affect over 130 people. That's massive when you think about it, and it probably can be so many more. I think that it's that unknown. It can affect everybody, and I think, in my own personal experience, it doesn't matter who it is, if it's a celebrity, if it's a close friend or an old school friend or someone that lives down the road from you that you find out has taken their life and died by suicide, that's where it affects you, because there's it's close to home, and it sort of makes you think about what those people can. What those people are going through,
what they're hiding,
what they're hiding behind, and I think that's where sort of that ripple effect really does flow out, because it doesn't matter who you are or where you're from.
Joe.
Yes, it's just to build on that. I think that, and this was, of course, my recent experience showing that very, very clearly how So the suicide, of course, there is a person that is now dead, and that is a shock to all. But it's kind of sparks a lot of feelings and thoughts, and the questions we as colleagues were asking ourselves was, could we have seen it? Could we have done something else? Was something that I said that contributed to this happening? So you start kind of second guessing, questioning yourselves, and I think so. So there is kind of an immediate effect, and the long-term effect is, of course, that it affects all the people around's mental health as well. So it's and it kind of takes a long time to recover for that, even though you kind of intellectually know that it wasn't your fault and you didn't do anything, but feeling that you should have and would have liked to help, that feeling is very strong, and it sits with you for a very long time.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you very much for that. It's very moving. I've got my own experiences with the SCS team. We unfortunately lost our lovely director back just before COVID, and I know I had to chuck in at the deep end. I was new. I had to get to know the team very, very quickly, deeply, and I know from experience that people still suffer from it today and have their queries, like you say. Could we have done something? We saw him walking out the door to go for his Christmas holiday, but we'll never know. But we supported each other as a team. Those people know who I mean back in the day.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that.
I'd just like to add later, if it's okay, there's Monday night, this Monday night just gone, at our club, we've got 305 clubs across the UK. 6,247 men walk through the doors on Monday night. When you think about that, that's 6,247 men actually talking about their stuff, going back to their families and reducing that ripple effect, because when you take into account that every suicide affects 130 plus people, now think how many lives you're impacting, how many lives are changing, and that's where it all needs to start. It needs to become that safe space, which is what Andy's Man Club and so many other charities, organisations offer now, is that safe place for guys to come and talk, get that stuff out there, start that conversation.
Mm-hmm. And I think also it might be useful to add, like the story you shared with us, with your wife, who actually put you in contact with the charity. It's not just about the men going forward, but it could be the partners that know about the charity and are welcome to the club as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was during the pandemic. I was self-employed, had my own business as a painter and decorator, really struggling with the fact that I couldn't go into people's houses, couldn't go onto site, didn't know where income was coming from, and started to spiral down that dark path that I knew I'd been in before. My partner had obviously realised that I was wearing that mask well and truly fixed to my face for, hiding something, hiding behind something, not talking about those issues that were going on. And, I was very sort of anxious. I suffered with anxiety. I was very anxious about the pandemic as well. So it was just building up. She came home one afternoon. I'd been out for lunch with a friend, and a friend had mentioned Andy's Man Club, and she handed me a card. And that card is how I ended up through the door of Andy's Man Club just over 3 years ago. I think, no matter what, Andy's Man Club on a Monday night, 7 to 9, is about us guys having a talk, getting that stuff off their chest. Outside of that, let's get the whole world talking, and let's get everybody focused on what starting those conversations. Doesn't matter whether it's through an Andy's Man Club on a Monday night or whether it's within your colleagues, your friends, your family, whoever. Start those conversations. Let's have those conversations and make them feel more open. Because I can't thank my partner enough for handing me that card that day.
I think that's important.
It really has changed my life.
I think it's an important step, because sometimes people's partners are a little bit more vocal. Mm-hmm. Ladies go out for, lunching, chat. And word of mouth is a powerful thing.
Absolutely.
Media. I just wanted you to stress one point you mentioned to me outside of this podcast. At one of your first meetings at Andy's Man's Club, you mentioned not necessarily talking, but a storyboard, a different method of releasing tension or not speaking at all at one of the clubs, or one of the sessions, should I say.
Yeah, so when you turn up to a session, it is very welcoming. There's always someone outside ready to welcome you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to talk at the club. You can listen and open. We have a talking board which pass around, and you can talk about those. You can talk or you don't have to talk. There's absolutely no pressure on a Monday night. You can just come for a cup of tea and biscuit.
Yeah, but I think your story shows that we all have a role to play in this. So as colleagues, as leaders, do we open for that conversation? So how do you interact? Do you only talk about the task at hand or the problems you have with keeping to program or making sure that your deliveries are on time and so on? Or do you open for all the kind of conversations? Inviting to open up, to talk about feelings, checking in with each other, saying, how are you actually doing?
Absolutely, Joe. Like you said about your sons, checking in with them, making sure it's all about the prevention. It's all about interacting, coming in before before we get to when that pressure pot explodes.
Yeah.
And it's about finding your person, I guess, as well. It doesn't matter whether that's an immediate colleague or it could be someone that works on a different site.
Yeah.
You just meet up with them if you feel that you can interact with them and start those conversations with them, but also being able to expand on that and have everybody being able to start those conversations and feel more open about talking. And I hope that's what comes out of today, Joe, with our conversation we're having.
Yeah, and I think also to your point, this is it. Sometimes the suicidal thoughts can be a bit triggered by crisis. There is a sudden crisis, something happens. Mm-hmm. Might be something physical, might be something that doesn't really kind of impact you, but it affects you mentally. It's a lot of things, but many times also it's something that builds up over time. It's not that one thing, but in the end there is this one little thing that makes it snap. So having those possibilities to ventilate your feelings, your thoughts, having someone listen, not necessarily giving advice, but just for you to articulate and go.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's putting words on what your feelings are. It really often
just
helps.
letting it out. It can help so much. Our question 3 on a Monday night is anything to get off your chest.
Yeah.
And that's literally what it is. Like, let's get it out there.
Yeah.
Let's get it out there, leave it in this room and go home.
Yeah.
I think where that really sort of comes into play within the workplace is we can have those conversations. We are able to start those conversations and be able to, if we've got that person to talk to and keep that pressure pot down, whether that's on a weekly, monthly, daily, however that is, I think that's where it starts to change, because it is a build-up of things. The guys that walk through our door on a Monday night, while I can't talk about individual stories, they're very much things around life, health, money, relationships, work, or a combination. And usually when someone's in a darker place, it will be a combination of 2, 3 and 4 of little things. And it can be that, people often talk about that straw that broke the camel's back. It can definitely be that. You could have 2 big things going on and then all of a sudden you get a parking ticket. And I'm already struggling with money, how do I pay this parking ticket? And that's the thing that can then tip you. I think and it's those little conversations that you just spoke about, Joe, that really help. So, I hope everybody that's listening to our podcast today starts a conversation.
Yeah, a problem shared is usually a problem halved. So, lovely. Thank you very much for that, both of you. The next section, before we close, is on myth busting, another subject that everyone voted they would love to hear more about. So, to help us change the narrative, I think we'll do some myth busting. Let's just quickly go over some common myths or preconceptions, as they say, to discuss if they are in fact fact or fiction. Okay, so the first one is, if a person is serious about suicide, there is nothing you can do. Stuart, Joe, true or false? What are your thoughts?
I'm certainly going to say thing, Joe.
You do so.
I think there's always hope. There's always something. That interaction.
Yeah.
It is a struggle. Mental health is a struggle. Life is a struggle. But when you start to change the narrative on it, which is what this is about today, I think that's where there is hope. Just by coming and talking about something, realising you're not alone in those situations yourself. We often feel alone when we're talking about feeling suicidal. And being able to share that with others, and not the feeling of burden on your immediate family, etc., is what really helps. So that's my point of view on it. I think there's always at some point you can interject.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I think that there's always something we can do, and there's not necessarily always a quick fix.
No,
but there are interventions. There are those conversations. So again, it's not necessarily the big things that kind of end up being the crisis. Likewise, it's not necessarily the big interventions that kind of changes the sentiment either. It might be what I do, what Stuart does, what your wife does. So all those little things. So if everybody helps, there will be another outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Okay. Right. Okay. Moving on. Asking about suicide puts the idea into people's minds. True or false?
So I can start on that, and I think it's obviously a false. Before I joined Skanska, I used to work for a newspaper, and their policy was that we don't write about suicide. So whenever someone, and of course all suicides doesn't end up on the front page of a newspaper anyhow, but sometimes they do. And the policy then was to not write about the cause of death. So they would write, died suddenly, died unexpectedly. And I think that has changed. And the sentiment around that is that it's not the conversation that sparks the idea. The idea is there. So the openness will rather help alleviate and free up your thoughts. So instead of focusing, but not focusing on the suicide itself, but then focusing on the root causes. So if it's a kind of in-depth article around something like that, they will not focus on the suicide itself, but they will focus on what happened, what was the root cause, was it something with society, was it your upbringing, was it school, was it your work life, so that instead of talking about what happened, you talk about what can we do to prevent and make sure that doesn't happen again. So I think very much that the sentiment around that has changed for the better.
I think one big change that I'm certainly seeing and we're seeing come into play is the fact that for many years we always said committed suicide. Suicide is not a crime. So by changing it to died by suicide, it puts it into the same category as died by illness, died by age, died by etc. So when you start to have those conversations, you find a conversation flows more easily, it's more comfortable to have, and it's something that we will always, with any of our communications, with anything that we put out across our network, etc., is to try and change the narrative, and that's probably the biggest starting point because there's so much stigma around, the word suicide. There's so much stigma around, mental health, for example, you talk about mental health and still to this day, people that think they're going to end up in an asylum, which, it's not the case. It's not the case. There is the support out there. There really is. And I'll talk about at the end, and I know Lou's going to talk about at the end about the other support networks that are out there. So,
Yeah, right, that's great. Really good conversation. Just a note here, the IASP, so that's the Institute Association of Suicide Prevention, they say most individuals with thoughts of suicide will invite others around to notice they are unhappy or distressed, behavioural or verbal cues. So it's that conversation highlights that further. So that's great. So as we're doing now, they say also obviously education and training can raise awareness of what these invitations are. But there's so much out there to look into. Everybody's just got to make the effort where they need to update each other. But in the closing section, so we can talk about what's out there. Firstly, I'd just like to say thank you so much to our guests today, Stuart and Joe. If anyone needs to learn more or get support after learning this podcast, there are lots of avenues to do so. So obviously this is a collaboration between SCS and Skanska. So first off, inside Skanska, we've got the Health and Wellbeing Hub. I've had a look at it. I'm part of Skanska as well as SCS. It's fantastic. So please take the time to, on Friday afternoon when things hopefully quiet down, have a little look. And there's all these contacts if you're confused or you need further support. Various employee networks, mental health first aiders posted around all the sites. You've got Maximus, which I know are posted on most toilet doors of Skanska when I visit the head offices and the sites there. The general EAP, which is 24 hours, I believe, as well as on SCS. And there are individual and project-wide stress risk assessments to target anything. Inside FCS, so there are various mental health first aiders on site. The EAP, which is 24 hours and also posted everywhere. Various external charities and stress risk assessments as well. And if you go on the intranet, you'll find all of this information. If anything is missing or you need further help, just contact myself, Louise Pashkiewicz, OH&W Manager for Tunnels and Shafts and Routeway. And also we have the wonderful Annie Scott, who's the OH&W Manager for Area West and Euston. Also we have the Lighthouse charity, which we've been engaging with across the patch, and we'll be arranging some more sessions there on site and online. We've also got brilliant resources online further, such as I mentioned earlier, the IASP, Samaritans, and The Mind as well. And there are myth-busting posters all over the site, I know, on Skanska at the moment that keep the conversation whereby we're trying to change that narrative. And of course, and not least, we've got Andy's Man Club, which Stuart has obviously taken us through. I don't know whether you'd like to say any more on that.
Yeah, no, I'd just like to add a couple of bits there. One, how to access Andy's Man Club, obviously. But first of all, everybody, please make use of your EAP programs. Please make use of your wellbeing hubs, whatever it is, build your toolbox, because I think we were talking about this earlier. I was always very aware of my physical health. I'd go to the gym, I'd eat well, etc. Was I aware of maintaining my mental health? No. All of these tools, all of these little bits, the bigger you build your toolbox with your mental health, the easier and hopefully more manageable it will become. So that's my first thing. You use those tools, use those resources that are out there. They're there for your benefit. Andy's Man Club. If you want to find your local club, we have over 300 clubs now. Pop onto andysmanclub.co.uk, where you'll be able to pop in your postcode town. It'll come up with the local clubs in your area. We also offer online, and that's a quick email to info@andysmanclub.co.uk on a Monday before 4 p.m. where you'll get sent out a link for a call at 7 p.m. All of our sessions run 7 till 9 on a Monday, except bank holidays.
Lovely. Okay. Well, thank you ever so much for your time. I'd just like to say a final thank you to everyone that's made the effort to join our podcast, and hopefully those who haven't will find the time another point this week or month or year. Again, I just want to stress, if anyone needs any support or just a chat, please reach out to myself or Annie or a mental health first aider. We'll be happy to help. Doesn't matter how small or big the issue, we will do our best to help. Have a lovely day and a lovely weekend. Thank you all.